Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the Aries collective, Sun, Moon and Ascendant. This is a little bit different to the sort of reads that I usually do, but it's something that's really important to me and it's something that I wanted to do for a long time. It was only really when I got this oracle deck here through a couple of days ago that the way that I could do it kind of became clear to me. I did a shadow reading for myself and it was quintessentially Leo, but it was also absolutely spot on for what I was, asking about at the time. And so I wanted to bring it to YouTube, I wanted to bring it to you and see if it could help you the way that it helped me. And I think there's an intrinsic value, huge intrinsic value in doing shadow work, and it's often overlooked in favour of the, being positive and high vibe all the time kind of attitude to things. Then yeah, there's a place for that. But psychoanalysts believe that 90% of all, reactions to things are unconscious, which means that you are only really in charge, really consciously in charge, 10%, right? Building a bridge between those two states, getting you to know yourself better, empowers you beyond anything else in the world, right? So I'm always going to stand and shout from the rooftops about the value of shadow work. It's quite rough and ready. I'm only going to pull 3 cards and we're only going to be here for a few minutes, 10 minutes tops. And I'm going to, like I said, pull 3 cards, one for the main concern, one for the root cause, and one for the recommendation. And the idea is to try and help you start building a dialogue between conscious you and unconscious you, right? Get you thinking, get you tracking stuff back and trying to work out why you do things. Because a lot of the time, we do things and people say, why did you do that? I'm like, absolutely no idea. No idea. Well, we do know. It was the shadow that made you do that, right? Now, by definition, shadow readings are uncomfortable, right? They're the bits of yourself that you have buried away, right? The bits of you that you don't acknowledge, that you don't want to know exist, right? And quite often they're the things that we judge the hardest in other people. So it's not something to go into lightly, right? This is something that you have to do when you're feeling, you got your okayness, right, together. Now, with that caveat in place, let's get you some cards. Like I said, I'm going to pull 3 cards, just 3 from the top. And we'll see what the cards have to say about your shadow, Aries. The first card is number 34. That's interesting. A couple of signs have had that one. The root cause is 13, the black cat. And the recommendation is number 7. Quite like that. It's very astral projectory. So because I've only had these cards a couple of days, I'm not completely au fait with all the meanings, so I've got my trusty PDF here. I want to have a look at what it says about each thing, see if we can relate it to you, right? This is called A Falling Woman. A woman tumbles from her high balcony and plummets helplessly through the night. With nothing to stop her fall, she will surely die once she hits the hard ground below. And the meaning is helplessness or insecurity, losing control and succumbing to your fate, anxiety. Now this is really interesting, Aries, because if it's one thing that Aries are renowned for, it is not losing control. In fact, you are completely obsessed with keeping control of things. Now that in and of itself should tell you something, right? Because as a sign, you are very rarely roll with things. You very rarely go with the flow. In fact, if anything, you kind of swimming against the tide quite often, because you're all about the pursuit of the new. But in doing that, you kind of you are failing to acknowledge that sometimes you can be a bit of a control freak. Now, control freakery tends to develop in people who were controlled heavily as children, right? And when you get to a point where you are able to make decisions for yourself, you do that and you do it with gusto. But sometimes, just sometimes, you tend to pull everybody else along with that as well, right? I had a family member who was an Aries. I remember somebody saying he was somewhere to the right of Genghis Khan in terms of his teaching style, right? Because it's all do as I say. right? And it's good in some ways because you are able to take control of situations and you are able to achieve things, but sometimes you want to be out front just for the sake of it, right? And you're kind of ignoring the fact that the reason that you felt the need to control everything so hard in the first place is because back in your past, somebody did that with you, right? And it left you feeling powerless, it left you feeling out of control, right? The root cause is 13, the black cat. A ferocious black cat toys with his latest kill. Before long he will move on and bury his deadly claws into new prey. And it talks about taking control over disempowering beliefs, choosing to create one's destiny instead of leaving it to chance. I mean, literally, this is just what we were talking about, right? The disempowering thing for you was having someone exhibit this kind of power over you during your formative years, right? Not giving you the freedom to explore gently for yourself, right? It was always about what they said they wanted you to do, right? Now, sometimes, a lot of the time, Aries choosing to create your own destiny instead of leaving it to chance is a fear of losing control, right? And this is interesting because it means that you fight harder, right, than most other people because you're always going against the flow, you're always going against the grain. And sometimes you make things harder for yourself than you need to because of your absolute abject terror of losing control of a situation, right? Track that back. Where did that start in you? When was the first point where you felt the need to control the situation, right? And not just the situation for you, but the situation for other people. Start that dialogue with yourself, right? It's about feeling really disempowered and overcorrecting, right? The recommendation is astral projection. A young girl curls up in her warm bed and dreams the night away. Her subconscious energy transcends the limits of her mortal body into a new dimension of possibilities. She must be careful not to stray too far, for a band of treacherous spirits look to cut her spiritual cord and steal her soul. Right? This is about vulnerability, right, and risk. But it's also about the subconscious. It's about drifting. It's about floating, right? It's about being careful. Now, Aries often will take risks, right? Quite a risk-taking sign. But sometimes it doesn't do any harm to float. Sometimes it doesn't do any harm to just drift and see where it takes you, because you find you might learn quite a lot about yourself in the process. Right? You know how to control situations. We know that. Everybody knows that. But if you're not in control of a situation, if you're having to put your trust and your vulnerability in somebody else, I think that you'll find that you'll start to get to know yourself a little bit more than you do at the moment. Very interesting. I have lots of thoughts on this, and this is the point where I would really, really love to get one of my shadow worky decks out and one of the shadow worky tarot decks out and start fleshing this out a little bit. But I think the main point is made, and so I'm going to leave it there. Like I said, I would really like some feedback, so if you've got anything to say, I'd love to hear it. If you're interested in having me expand this out and make it something a bit more comprehensive and extended, then also please do say. But for now I shall leave it here, and yeah, I'll see you all very soon.